Hey y'all, how's everybody doing? In case you have wondered why the quality of my videos has gone down from what it used to be, it's because I'm back to as I began using my old Intel webcam to capture my video because I started having a problem um, transferring from my video camera over to here, and it's like if I set my video camera up here and do like a direct thing with Movie Maker, then my lighting is really poor and it's just so much easier to do it this way. So there you go. um, Everything's going okay here. Tonight I am watching porn and making cookies. At least one of those is true, possibly both. I'm going to leave it up to you to decide. And Falcon had to go to bed early because he's got work in the morning. Left me up to my own devices, which is okay. I needed to get some other stuff done anyway. And, I was going to tell you about something that I was going to say I found. My mother found it. Something that was found last summer. You know, kind of late in the summer, she inherited an old laptop from her sister Anne. And we got a router and got her hooked up with wireless internet, and she had to learn to use the internet. She had used it a little bit before, but pretty much everything I had taught her at any time had left. So I had to start reteaching her all over again how to do stuff, and it was very frustrating for me and very frustrating for her, but now she seems to have a fairly good handle on it. But when I was first showing her Google and trying to show her how to use it and showing her the different things you could do on it, I still haven't shown her anywhere near all of the stuff you can do with it, but at least as far as using it as a search engine. And one of the things I showed her that I thought was kind of fun was reverse number lookups, and I encouraged her to Google her own name and see what came up, because you never know. And she did, and nothing showed up that was about her, really, at all. There were a couple of people with her name. Her name's a little unusual. Mine is even more unusual. And she found a couple of things, but it was about other people with that name. And they were all from quite a bygone era. And one of the things that she found, and I remember that day I was sick with a cold or something. I was just kind of lying on the couch like a dead fish. And she was sitting on the other end of the couch with her lappy, and she found this thing and she read it to me, and I remember lying there and being just mesmerized and quite amused by it all. It was quite surreal to be sort of fevery and hearing this. And it was articles from an old Tennessee newspaper. And the thing that had her name was, it was Mrs. So-and-so, her name, died such and such day. From pneumonia or whatever at age 72. She was survived by her son, and and it's weird. I couldn't stand to look at it. I cut and pasted that whole website, the whole web page. It was just one page. I had to take that out though. It was too weird to see some story about my mama dying. So, but it was from a paper in Tennessee. There were a couple of articles that were from 1916, but most of the rest of them. Oh, my timer just rang. Most of the rest of them are from 1920, and I've got to go take care of my porn. The timer just rang. I'll be right back. As I was saying, but considering it was a Deep South newspaper, and considering the vintage of it, it made for some interesting reading. These were like just stories that were about births and deaths and a few little news items, like local. It was all very local stuff. It was, once in a while there'd be one, so-and-so eloped the other day and stuff like that. And so-and-so had a baby girl. But the ones that particularly interested me, I have saved and I will share with you. And part of it was the poetry of how it was worded and written. Very theatrical, and some of it were the actual stories. It seems that, well, let me just read some to you, okay? Mr. James Madison Stone, okay, this is Humboldt, Tennessee, Friday, August 25th, 1916. Mr. James Madison Stone of Denmark has been a recent guest of his great niece, Mrs. Fanny Cates, on East Church Street. Mr. Stone bears the distinction of being 103 years old and is still hale, hearty, and active. He was born in 1812 during Madison's first administration as president and was named for him. Mrs. Sally Ann Permenter was thrown from her buggy one day last week and her back strained. One of Edgar Dungan's boys has malarial fever. The death angel visited this vicinity last Thursday and took as its victim Mr. W. E. Bond, aged 73 years. He was a member of the Baptist Church at Antioch and was a good man. He leaves his wife and 6 children burial at Antioch. Tennessee News briefly told, William Gratham, a farmer aged about 60 years, was struck and killed by a southbound freight train at the depot in Covington at 8 o'clock last Friday. Might I point out, it seems like death by train was pretty common during this period in America. I don't quite get it, but it's not like you don't know where they're going. Oh, they're unpredictable. They're all over the road. No, they're not. They're on the track. You know, if you stand on the track, you're going to get run over. Don't jump from the train. Don't stand on the track. Thank you. Dyersburg, Tennessee, August 27th. A gruesome tragedy marred the Sabbath of the little village of Rowland when Charlie Green went home at midnight and found his mother-in-law, Mrs. Callahan, 60 years of age, with her throat cut from ear to ear with a bloody razor beside her, and her grandchild lying nearby with its throat also cut. Both bodies were lying in the backyard. The young couple were planning to move to Dyersburg, and this fact preyed upon Mrs. Callahan's mind as she was fond of the 18-month-old child. She had said during the week that they would not take the little one away from her. An appreciation. Mrs. Georgiana Oliphant, the names, I swear. Mrs. Georgiana Oliphant Lane was born February 13, 1847, died in the full triumph of the Christian faith, August 17, 1925, in Humboldt, Tennessee, in the home of her daughter, so-and-so. All of the rest of it doesn't matter. I just love that. Died in the full triumph of the Christian faith. Bless her. Henrietta Mitchell, a colored woman who lives near Kenton, was run over by a freight train at Rives a few days ago, and one of her arms cut off and her body badly bruised. What was she doing on the tracks? I repeat. In memory of Frankie Raines Craddock, on the evening of January 3rd, 1920, while the shades of night were gathering over the land, the death angel hovered over the home of Mr. and Mrs. Jesse Craddock and claimed for its victim the sweet spirit of their baby girl. The little remains were laid to rest in Collinsworth Cemetery. In memory of Mrs. Sally A. Rather, on last Wednesday, just a few minutes before the hour hand reached 2 o'clock, at the home of her son-in-law, John T. Thorne, she answered the summons to appear before the court of glory. She lived for many years in Holly Springs, Mississippi. She always looked upon it as her home. Her remains will be taken so-and-so for burial. Taken back there for burial. Summons to appear before the court of glory. This appears to be from the Courier Chronicle, Humboldt, Tennessee, January 23rd, 1920, Thursday. An unusually sad accident occurred at Crossroads Church in the 5th District of this county last Saturday, when Mrs. Hart and her little girl went to church nearby for the purpose of cleaning the church. To make the room more comfortable, kindled a fire, using gasoline on the flames instead of oil. Oops. The flames flashed out, ignited their clothing. Death ended their suffering a few hours later. She leaves a broken-hearted husband and 2 small children. January 1920. Conductor met death at Milham. Memphis, Tennessee, January 28th. The body of Albert Pierce, 48, who was instantly killed yesterday morning at Millen, Tennessee, when he was crushed under the wheels of the L&N freight train on which he was a conductor, will be laid to rest. Services from the residence, 655 Leith Street. Burial will be in Forest Hill Cemetery. He met his death at 6:45 a.m. while directing a switching of a cattle car attached to his train. Hanging onto the side of his train, he was knocked off when his body struck a cattle chute which protruded towards the track. He was virtually decapitated and his body otherwise mangled when the wheels of several cars passed over him. That'll do it. The victim had been in the employ of the L&N Railroad for 25 years. Besides his wife, Mrs. Pearl Pierce, the deceased is survived by 5 children. Terrible. Now that I can understand. I know that switching the cars is dangerous, or used to be very dangerous. And, if you get hit and knocked onto the tracks and a train runs over you coming from the other direction, well, it's forgivable. I will waive the stupidity thing on that one. Uncle Serge Donald, a respectable old Negro, died at his home here Thursday morning. Respectable old Negro. It's just quaint. It's quaint wording. The fact that they had to point out that he was not Caucasian is always humorous. Bethpage, Tennessee, January 24th. I believe this is still 1920. Miss Lillian Williams, 15-year-old daughter of Mrs. Callie Williams, jumped from a train running 15 miles an hour at Bledsoe, 4 miles above here, this 7 a.m. She was badly hurt and was carried to Gatlin for medical attention. Dumb. Trezevant, Tennessee, January 24th. Thomas Hardy, a prominent citizen of the 7th District of this county, attempted to commit suicide a few days ago by drawing a razor across his throat, cutting 2 large gashes across the jugular vein. His attempt did not prove fatal, and he was later found insane and has since been carried to Bolivar, which I assume is a mental asylum. He has a wife and several small children. Which could explain why he went nuts and tried to slit his throat. Ooh, I didn't say that. Okay. February 6, 1920. I'm sorry. That was a terrible, sad story, but there you go. February 6, 1920. Interesting news from Gibson. The death angel has visited our community again and taken 2 of our neighbors and loved ones. On Saturday morning, the spirit of Miss Irma Hunt took its flight to the brighter world, and we do not know who the other one is. February 13th, 1920. The dead. Another old ex-Confederate soldier has been called across to rest under the shade of the trees. At the home of his son in Memphis last Tuesday morning, the spirit of William E. Ray broke loose from its earthly casket of suffering and returned to his good father. Interment in Bellevue Cemetery, blah, blah. February 20th, 1920. And I know you guys can hear me rolling my mouse. Sorry, that's just the way it is, because the way I've got stuff set up. Deal with it. Davidson Chapel notes, a dark cloud of sorrow casts its mantle of gloom over our community. Sunday, when the death angel visited us, claiming for its first victim Mr. Joe A. Bell, just 11 hours and 20 minutes after his death, his wife, Mrs. Mattie Skiles Bell, also passed away. They were buried in the same grave in Davidson Chapel Cemetery Monday, leaving 2 children, 6 grandchildren, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters. And Falcon, after complaining of the extreme morbidity of these things when I read them to him one night, had to add his little 2 cents. I wonder who got to be on top. I think we all probably wonder that a little bit. Let's see. March the 26th, 1920. Tragic death of L.W. Haste. At Troy, Alabama, on last Thursday night, L.W. Haste, traveling salesman of Nashville, was found murdered. The car was stuck up in the road about dark, and the salesman, who was compelled to spend the night at a nearby farmhouse. The farmer, who it turns out was a moonshiner and a desperate character, mistook Mr. Haste for a revenue man and struck him with a hammer while he was sleeping, after shooting him through the side of the head with a Derringer pistol twice. Shot him in the head twice and then beat him with a hammer just to make sure he was really dead. Poor L.W. The last one, Grandma Stochin, whose serious illness has been recorded from week to week, quietly, peacefully, like a babe going to sleep on its mother's breast, breathed her last in the home of her daughter, Mrs. J.P. Neal, last Wednesday night, surrounded by her children and relatives. Service at the home was followed by burial in Alamo Cemetery. May we all go that peacefully. I would like to pass on the falling off a train and being decapitated and torn all up thing, and just go right on to the being old and being a grandma and going to sleep like a babe on its mother's breast. I love those. They were wonderful. Yeah, they're quite poetic and beautiful. I thought you guys would get a kick out of them. Some of them are gruesome. It's better than a tabloid. It just is. So I thought you'd get a kick out of those. There you go. I'm always thinking about you. Talk to you later. I may make more videos tonight. Have the night to myself. Hee hee. But I'm going to go finish my porn and cookies for now. Later, taters.